Okay. I now all of a sudden feel like I have a super dry throat. I think I'm just scared because we're doing this in the daylight.
Not used to it?
No.
Welcome back to another episode of Is Fitz Happy? My name is Luke.
And I'm Emma.
And today we are discussing Chapter 6, Chivalry's Shadow. But first, we have to go back to Chapter 5, because looking on the internet, we found some answers to the questions that we had.
Yeah, actually answered by Robin Hobb herself.
Yes. So on a forum for Robin Hobb / Megan Lindholm on Tappa Talk, there is a post there that is asking basically about the same conversation that we were talking about. It was confirmed to be between Shade and Shrewd.
This is the part in last chapter where Fitz is super sick and we think is skill hearing a conversation.
Correct, yes. And that is confirmed by her, actually, that he had worried himself into such a state and was thinking of them that he put down his skill walls and was just concentrating on Shade and Shrewd in general, so he was able to overhear that conversation between the two of them.
Yeah.
And the big question that we had was, who was the other one when Shade, it's also confirmed that it was Shade saying this, break him like you broke the other one.
Mm-hmm.
And she straight up says it was Chivalry.
Yeah. So there's a fun little tidbit. Thank you, Internet.
Yeah.
And also Robin Hobb for answering, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, this was answered back in 2008. So
Yeah.
we just kind of missed this post in general. It basically, the queen kind of had been prying them apart and was scheming ever since the boys were young.
Mm-hmm.
And Robin Hobb in here, I'll just quote it to you, says that she creates situations in which no matter what Chivalry does, his actions can be interpreted as disloyal. And these are, quote, events that are not told and probably never will be, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Because we were asking about that Queen Desire backstory, but nope.
Guess not.
Yeah. The discovery that when he was much younger, he fathered a bastard is just the pry bar she needs to get him out of her way. In many ways, the heir is driven out, and not just to make more room for her son. The action isolates Chivalry and makes Shade and Verity both more vulnerable to her plotting. So Shade is just like talking to King Shrewd like, oh, you're going to break him like you broke the other one.
Yeah. And she does
talking about
say,
father and son.
Yeah, she does say that it's supposed to be more of a sarcastic remark, like how you would listen to an old couple arguing.
Yeah, definitely.
She also said that she was, I think, surprised that it didn't come across that way to people.
Yeah, let's see. It's all about tone. When Shade in anger suggests to Shrewd that he, quote, break him as you broke the other one, he's being sarcastic or inviting someone to make the same mistake all over again. Imagine a husband and wife quarreling, and one saying to the other, go ahead, lie to me again. And you have the tone of the comment. I'm a bit chagrined that the tone didn't carry in the context. Mm-hmm. So they're talking about father and son there, which is nice to know an answer to, and Galen was not in the picture at all.
Not at all.
But I definitely wanted to share that. And she goes on to explain that from incidents in this chapter, when Chivalry, quote, accidentally dies, Shade takes it very seriously because Shade and Chivalry had a very good relationship.
Yeah.
And that Fitz kind of talks to him and kind of beats around the bush, asking him whether or not that he had a hand in it. And Shade kind of leads him to the conclusion that it might be the queen instead.
Right.
Just to make him more aware of her.
Yeah. And we can leave a link to that on our Facebook. I think it would be pretty hard anywhere. Maybe we could do it on Twitter too.
Yeah.
But
I might try to put it in the show notes as well. We'll see if it pops up on Podbean on our
so if
website.
you want to read the conversation for yourself, you can.
Yeah. That's isfitzhappy.com or isfitzhappy on our Facebook. And we can link it on Twitter as well.
Yeah.
At isfitzhappy.
I would like to shout out another podcast. If you like hearing about this series, which I assume you do if you're listening.
I would hope so.
There is another podcast called Buckkeep Radio.
Yeah, definitely.
They are a podcast that does a couple chapters at a time with a review. They're going through the series with rereaders and first-time readers. Some of the rereaders have only read the farcier books, and some of them have read all of the series, but they talk about, what goes on. They have a non-spoiler podcast. So if you have friends who are just starting out reading the book and they can't really listen to us, send them over to Buckkeep.
Yeah.
Buckkeep Radio. It's
a really interesting format because you can hear the thoughts of people about the characters and like what they liked about certain things. And in your mind, you're just like, oh, just wait till you get to this part. And I think that's pretty much exactly what the other hosts do too. The ones who have already read the books. And then at the end of the episodes, they have a spoiler section where they kind of discuss what those new readers are thinking as well. So yeah, if you like Realm of the Elderlings, please go and check them out too. Yeah, get some more Robin Hobb content in your life. All right, so chapter 6. This is Chivalry's Shadow. So we start off again with a little snippet. Is there anything you wanted to talk about specifically before I dive into what I was going to say? Not particularly. Once again, this is about the naming of the royals and the origins of that. And we've kind of gotten the two sides already. This is one of the things that did annoy me on my first couple reads through of this series, is that the beginning chapters here, I always thought the beginning history stories were interesting, but there was a lot of repeat about the names. Yeah. But it's always nice to dive in and get further details on them. So I might comment on some things once in a while, but did you have anything that you specifically wanted to point out? Well, I had a question. So just based off the line, but for the purposes of royalty, it is better to have the common folk believe that a boy given a noble name must grow to have a noble nature. I'm just wondering, do you think all of the nobles know that this is kind of just some made-up farce that they're just playing along with for the sake of the peasants? Or do you think that some of them truly believe that they're giving their children this attribute by naming them that? Oh, I think 100% that some of them truly believe. Desire. Not to name names. I actually don't think it's her. I think she's named him Regal in order to give that perception to the common folk. Fair. And that she was smart in doing so just to get that notion out there. Right. I think she's too clever to believe that herself. Fair. But yeah. I was just wondering because we do know that a lot of the townspeople have regular names. They don't have the cool royalty names like Molly or Carrie, and like those are regular people names, not really a personality trait. Yeah, so I think it's pretty much reserved for the royal line or nobles in general. Yeah, so that's why I was wondering if it's like just another way to set them apart that they're purposefully doing to kind of trick commoners, or if it was like something they really believed in. Just a thought. And I mean, it doesn't even have to be malicious tricking. It's the propaganda, the view that you have towards the monarchy helps you rule. So it's smart to give you a nice name. Yeah, true. give your kid a nice name, and then the people will look up to you, be like, oh wow, yeah. He is truthful. He is chivalrous, He is regal. But also, I did want to point out that it's pretty funny that
Taker and Ruler weren't actually their names. That's just kind of what it vaguely sounded like.
Right, yeah.
In the duchy's language versus their own tongue, which is also an interesting thing to point out, that the language of the six duchies was adopted by the people who took over them.
Yeah, definitely.
They didn't keep their own tongue, which I thought was interesting. And maybe it's kind of like Old English, where like to now, where there was a little bit of adoption of some words, but for the most part, the people getting took over just like, no, we're gonna speak our way.
Which is kind of unique in that usually the conquerors kind of force their culture and their language upon people, but since this was a man coming from the out islands where they don't normally rule,
right?
I'm wondering if he took,
yeah,
because they have such a view on Ida and El, and since El is the sea and like the man god's domain,
right,
and the female god's domain is the land, I'm wondering if he if in their culture they kind of consider that sacred, and that's like the land's language, and you kind of have to adopt that.
Interesting.
I'm not sure.
I don't know either. Or
Another
maybe
thing
it's like when the Vikings came to England and they tried real hard, but
and they just
the
couldn't
English
do it.
were like, nah, no thanks. But no, I like your answer better.
Honestly, I like yours better. The six duchies people were just like, nah.
That's a weird word for that. I'm gonna.
What's
keep
your
calling
name?
it.
Taker? That sounds right.
Yeah. You know what? Their names must mean something.
But at the beginning of this, we meet Fedrin finally. We've had him mentioned a couple times, but now our scribe is right in front of us, and he's calling Fitz boy.
That's true, which is fair. I feel like it might be a little awkward to like call a child bastard, basically.
Yeah,
like it would feel weird.
I'm pretty sure that Hodd probably calls him boy. That, I mean,
We know
Jade calls him
does,
boy. It just goes to show that Fitz still doesn't have an actual name.
Yeah.
He's Fitz, but that's also
Not really.
a slightly derogatory
Yeah.
name in general.
Yeah. So calls him boy.
We learn that it's winter here, and you would think it'd be a continuation from last chapter, but in a few pages we learn that a few years have passed. And he's about 12 right now.
So I also want to talk about the safety of being in this castle, because there's a storm going on outside. And sometimes the force is sending a tremor through the stone floor beneath them.
Yeah, from the waves pounding on the cliffs.
So I'm just wondering, like,
It's a strong storm.
yeah, that is definitely a strong storm, but like, it's a stone castle, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
like, I don't know. I was like, oh, that doesn't sound safe. Maybe somebody should work on the foundation, but I don't know. Interesting.
And Fedrin calls him up to look over his paper, because they are practicing letters and learning to read and actual calligraphy.
Yeah,
and
and
scribing.
not just six duchies letters, other nations' letters as well.
Specifically calls out the Out Islander runes. I don't think they learn too much about the Mountain Kingdom at all. But it's six duchies and Out Islanders for sure.
Yeah.
And when he hands over the paper, it's kind of like getting called up to a teacher's desk, like, hey, let me look over your work. And you're just kind of standing there awkwardly waiting for them to be done reading.
Yeah.
Fitz expands his wit senses a little bit. It kind of shows that he is gaining a lot more control over what he can do. He's still not trained in anything really.
Yeah.
But at least he knows how to keep himself reined in and expand it when he needs to be. And I feel like that was out of necessity being around Byrrc.
Yeah, for sure.
But it seems a pretty cozy place. I mean, they're in the Great Hall right now. There's lots of people around. Some people, tatting lace. Some people teaching kids how to sing.
sing counting songs.
Counting
Little
songs and things
sheep
like that.
Counting songs. That's cute. And some of the kids around his fire, because there are 3 fires, are dozing off because it's a very gray day. And that's very relatable. I remember when I was in school, if the weather was gray, I was definitely not at my peak attention span time.
And he seems to be extremely skilled in writing.
Mm-hmm.
Fedrin finds a couple mistakes, but he's very pleased in general, and even suggests that, oh, maybe you can start actually copying books, and that's usually not offered to students. So he's kind of propping him up, and Fitz has that diligent work ethic from Burek and Chade's lessons, I'm guessing, too.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And we know that he's really good at attention to detail. So,
oh, yeah.
I mean, it's not super surprising, but definitely cool to see that he does excel in the classroom.
But at the end of that, Fedrin invites him to be an apprentice.
Yeah.
Offers him the chance to explore the 6 duchies, wander around with him during the summer.
Mm-hmm.
And Fitz kind of latches onto that idea. He's kind of astounded that somebody would even want him to do anything like that.
Yeah.
And it's sweet of Fedrin to even think of this. Like, he is thinking of Fitz as a boy without future prospects except under Chivalry's shadow.
Yeah.
Except under the largesse of the king.
Mm-hmm.
And he's kind of implies that later on, and he says, like, it would be good for you to have a profession.
Right.
Good for you to be established before that goes away at any point, because you don't know the future.
Mm-hmm. And that made me wonder if Fedrin is also, like, maybe not a legitimate child, because he is really concerned about Fitz's future and wants... I mean, it's probably not just that he's concerned about Fitz's future. Like, Fitz is also excelling at this thing and is showing a good work ethic. But it did make me wonder, like, why is he so nice to Fitz about this? Why is he so concerned about Fitz's future? Not that you can't just be a nice person.
I think he's... I mean, we don't know his past, but I think he's just a nice person in general, because we know that Fitz has been ingratiating himself with the keep's general common folk, the servants, the cooks, the different tradesmen. He's been garnering a reputation for himself under Chade's tutelage as a sharp-witted and smart lad. And I think that Fedrin has just taken a liking to him in general. Okay. And that he's intelligent, and he has seen a lot of people go through things. That's my thought, at least, because he is well-traveled. He goes around, the whole land during the summers, comes back during the winters, and takes on a new apprentice. He's been through this process a lot. I'm sure he notices and has seen a lot of things.
Yeah,
he's a smart guy.
So he would know what would be coming. That is a good point, I guess.
Chade does mention later that he seems smarter than he thought, though. So he could just be insightful, or he could have that actual experience, like you were saying. Mm-hmm. He could just know what's possibly coming.
Yeah. Huh.
Fedrin answers Fitz when Fitz is kind of incredulous that he could leave Buckkeep, and Fitz's mind kind of is like blown. He's like, wow, I can actually, go places maybe? And Fedrin's like, yes, leave Buckkeep. As you grow older, Chivalry's shadow will grow thinner. It will not always shelter you. Better you are your own man with your own life and calling to content you before his protection is entirely gone. But you don't have to answer me now. Think about it. Discuss it with Burek, perhaps.
Yeah.
And that never happens. He goes directly to Chade.
No. It makes sense, because Burek doesn't really know about Fitz's pact with Shrewd and the whole assassin lesson. So
true.
It doesn't matter if Burek would approve, which we all know he would, because it's more about what the king would say. And I think Chade would be more able to tell Fitz if he not legally could, but like
But since it's the king, it's legally, I guess.
Like if he could, if it would be chill with the king.
And Fitz is really, talking sideways at this topic. He's like, "Oh, have you ever been here? Is it nice? Have you ever been here? Is it nice, Shade?
I've heard of this place. Isn't that over here?"
Yeah. Shade, have you ever been anywhere that's better than Buckkeep? And Shade's like, "Spit it out. Come on, man." And Fitz kind of explains the offer, and Shade has to have a frank discussion with him out of experience. This is actual royal illegitimate son experience talking to Fitz, even though Fitz doesn't really know that yet. Mm-hmm. Shade's like, "No." He spoke softly but abruptly. "No matter where you went, you would still be Chivalry's bastard." And he says that Fedran is very insightful to see this, but he still doesn't see the full picture. He doesn't understand that the further you are away from the crown, the more people see you as a threat, because you're not obviously directly underneath the king and working with the king. Mm-hmm. And therefore, Shrewd could then see you as a threat or somebody else's tool to use against him.
Mm-hmm. So I was wondering with this whole conversation where he basically says, if you did this, you would end up dead. Do you think that Shade is like kind of giving him a vague threat of like, I would have to be the one to kill you if you did that because it would be traitorous? Or is it just trying to scare him to stop thinking about this?
I think it's more to try to scare him, because I think later in the series, Shade says that I would never obey anything to, like, an order to kill you. And I think he says it about Chivalry as well. Mm-hmm. It might be when they're discussing if Shade had a hand in Chivalry's death or not.
Right.
I can't remember. But I think it's more to scare him. But I also think it's a very big possibility that if it got to that point, if Shade refused, Shrewd would find somebody.
Right.
He would find somebody to do it because he needs to protect his own line.
Mm-hmm. Which doesn't seem fair to me, because it's not like Fitz going to be a scribe would be a bad thing.
No, right.
And honestly, maybe he would learn more that way, because then he could go to other people's keeps and during the summer and like know more about them. And you'd think that would be useful if they want to know, more about their kingdom and what's going on. But
it's definitely true. But I think Shade is more commenting on traveling in general or leaving Buckkeep in general, and not just being a scribe. Right.
Well, I guess he does say that he would be, oh no, never mind. Says he's hostage to his bloodline. I thought he could be a hostage for his bloodline. Yeah. I read it wrong for a second. Sorry. But I guess, yeah.
There is a mention that Shade throws in here that says, these are restless times. The Out Islanders are getting braver about their raids, which another wink. This is like, 5 in the last 6 chapters or something like that about the upcoming difficulties with that.
Mm-hmm. Do you think the kingdom has always been in this bad of a shape? Like, was Chivalry really doing that much that there wasn't this much unrest? Or is it just bad timing that Chivalry abdicated the throne and then everything's going downhill?
I think a little bit of both.
Okay.
In this chapter, Shade does mention, really soon actually, that Verity is a fine fellow to have a mug with, but he is neither the soldier nor the diplomat that Chivalry was.
Right.
So I think that there's a little bit of Verity will do as he's told from Shrewd.
But he won't go above and beyond.
I don't think that Shade believes he has the capacity to do that.
Right.
That he has the training or the management skills to be able to discern what needs to be done and do that without being kind of told. And I also think it's very bad timing with the Pale Woman and everything like that, kind of amassing all those difficulties.
Well, I guess
there's raids always, but there's not the intensity of raids as
Right.
usual.
And also, we have Desire stirring up stuff in the inland duchies, so
Yeah.
that doesn't help. But I guess technically it is like fate in a way, but it's like the fate that the whites have chosen
Right.
at this point. Right?
Man.
So, which is a weird thought that like all this stuff, this unrest is happening because of the path chosen.
Yeah, and they probably know
Yeah.
what's going on with it.
So weird.
I kind of want to know, like, do they have spies throughout, like, this whole period? Or are they just going off prophecy?
The whites?
Yeah, I don't remember too much about...
No,
this
I
isn't
think...
great conversation for chapter 6 in book 1, but...
I think the whites just go strictly off prophecy because they know they're right. Right? So they have enough...
I would think so.
They wouldn't need people there unless they're...
And the pale lady is their
Yeah.
agent.
Right. So she would know some of what was going on.
Yeah.
So presumably, but yeah, anyway. Just a weird thought I had. Well, sorry to get off on a tangent.
But Shade continues on and says, like, yeah, there's a lot of unrest out there. If chivalry is seen as gaining more favor and stuff, like, the small folk could, you know, try to get him to become king again. And Fitz kind of gets excited and he's like, imagining what could happen. Yeah, my dad can come back then.
Poor BB.
And Shade's like, no, boy, not likely at all. He just has to be completely frank with him and upfront, and it's rough telling a 12-year-old boy that no, your father's not coming back.
Yeah, and not only is he not coming back, but he can't come back.
Yeah.
Like, ugh.
So Fitz's choice is, you know, to be a corpse or the king's tool, and Fitz kind of has his heart sink there, and he's like, okay, I'm never going to be able to do anything in my life then.
And then Shade said something that I really like. Most prisons are of our own making. A man makes his own freedom too. I don't know. I like that quote. I just had to point it out.
Yeah. And Shade also points out that none of the other people that are of the royal line get to do what they want either.
Mm-hmm.
Chivalry never made his itinerary of where to go and who to schmooze and get treaties with.
Right.
He's always told. Verity is always told where to go too.
Yeah.
That's just what you have to do.
Even Regal is told what to do.
Yeah.
So, grass isn't always greener.
And he is probably more free at Withy Woods than he ever was before, but he can't come back to Buckkeep.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. He says, better he faded quietly away. And Fitz later says that's prophetic.
Yeah, that's true. Oh.
So Fitz continues on this conversation slightly and says that he kind of wants to go back down to town once in a while.
At least wants to be able to
he
go to town.
at least wants to go to town.
And he can't even do that.
Because he has people there that don't think of him as the royal bastard. They call him New Boy, and they're his friends. And we later learn that he hasn't been to see them in over a year.
Yeah.
Which is crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Like he steals afternoons once in a while, it says earlier, but now it's like
and
over a year since he saw any of his friends.
And this is the first time he's ever admitted to himself that's why he likes town.
Yeah.
He never really put it to words before, and now he's like, oh yeah, that's actually why I like going down there, because for once I don't have to be the bastard.
Yep.
Oof.
Not labeled like that.
Yeah. And poor Shade, who probably 100% understands that feeling. Just like, and then turns the topic right around. No more of that.
Yep. No more of that for lesson, and then time for lessons. But then mysteriously 2 days later, Fedrin the scribe has a list of things that Fitz has to get in town.
And he has to spend all day doing it.
Yep, with no timetable to return.
So do you think this was actually Fedrin?
It's Shade.
Yep. Okay.
100%.
That's what I thought too. Because all the weird asks on the list were...
Well, I think Fedrin would actually...
use the stuff?
You have some of it, but I think Shade put a couple things down too.
Yeah, see, that's I was like, these items are too weird. I think Shade's just getting errands done and making Fitz feel a little bit better.
Yeah, he says, I had no idea what use a scribe had for dried sea maid's hair or for a peck of forester's nuts. Perhaps he used them to make his colored inks, I decided. But it takes him all over town in general. He goes to some of the regular stores, and then he goes to the Harbor Bazaar, and then he goes to a couple traders from the inland area where he could find the nuts. And this is where we meet some people from Fitz's past.
Right. So there's an old woman who sells him the nuts, and we get a description of her having a strong, straight nose, and her eyes were on bony shelves over her cheeks. It was a racial heritage both strange and oddly familiar to me. And he realized that she's from the mountains.
Yeah.
And then this woman's stallmate, I don't know.
Yeah,
it's not really a stall.
The woman on the next mat. So.
Yeah. The woman selling next to her, who is considerably younger, says, "Keppit."
And then says it again, and she's just staring at Fitz.
Uh-huh.
And he's kind of wondering what it meant in her language, which means that she's from the mountains as well.
Mm-hmm. But notice, this woman is just called the young woman next to the older woman. She doesn't have any descriptors. Not once do we, not even the color of her hair.
Nope.
There's nothing about
It's
this
just
woman.
The woman and she.
Uh-huh.
It seemed a request for something, but the older woman only stared coldly out into the street, so I shrugged at her younger neighbor apologetically and turned away as I stowed the nuts in my basket. And she shrieks, "Keppit," again.
Yeah.
And the older woman is gripping the younger one by her wrists and keeping her there and trying to calm her down, and a crowd gathers around them.
Right. Which is really sad.
Yeah, because we find out later that Keppit is Fitz's actual name.
Uh-huh. So
and that's his
mom.
mother and probably grandmother.
Yeah. Which is a little bit sad that his grandma had zero reaction to him. And I wonder if that's purposeful to try to not rile up her daughter.
It could be that. It could be maybe not her grandmother. It could be just like an older woman who had, taken her under her wing as a trader or something like that.
Right.
Because this is, he's
several
about
years later.
12, so it's 6 years after the last time she saw him.
Right.
And it says that this is the mats where the inland traders were, so she left the Mountain Kingdom, became a trader, and has been wandering around the Six Duchies for 6 years.
Do you think it was to see if she could find her
yes,
son?
I do.
Oh, that's really, really sad. I didn't think about it like that.
Because when the grandpa dropped him off, he said that he couldn't take care of the family anymore.
Right.
He was the one doing the work. He was taking care of them.
Uh-huh.
She had to leave and then found a job to continue traveling.
Mm-hmm.
When the grandpa got rid of Fitz, then he could have continued to take care of the family. He kind of implied that he wanted Fitz's mom to find a husband to settle down somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
She doesn't have a man by her.
Right. Well,
She came from the Mountain Kingdom.
Yeah.
And ended up in Buck. I think she was looking for him.
That's fair. But I don't want to say that maybe she didn't remarry just because there's no man around her.
Definitely, yeah.
But
I mean, that's true. But like, if you're a trader from a different area and you're setting up shop in one of the main towns, why wouldn't you have
your family with you?
Your family with you.
Right. Good point. Good point. Oh, that's really sad.
Yeah.
And Fitz just doesn't even acknowledge there's no. And okay, so part of me wonders if the reason there's no
description or anything.
No description, but also no sense of, that sounds familiar whenever she says Keppit. If that's because we're hearing this from the point of view of Fitz, who has given away all his memories of his mom.
Potentially.
So he just truly cannot remember feeling any sort of familiarity to that word. Or, if this is just because at this point it's been so long and he's had so many more people introduced into his life that he truly is just
forgetting in general.
Yeah.
Memory repression and everything like that.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, probably a little bit of both.
Yeah. But anyway, so
Before we can think on it too much further,
yep.
we get another familiar face from the past.
Molly.
And he calls out to her and says, "Nosebleed." He's like, "Wait, did I call it to the wrong person? She looks kind of unfamiliar." Oh wait, no, that is Molly. But Molly is very
Cold towards him.
cold. He reaches out his mind and says and says that she's feeling, nervousness and a fear.
Which is weird. Because presumably anybody who's calling her Nosebleed would be someone from her past as a child.
Right.
So what has happened in this year to her with the other boys in town that makes her afraid of people recognizing her as Nosebleed?
It says, "Aren't you Molly Nosebleed?" And she says, "I'm Molly Chandler." I saw recognition in her eyes, but her voice was chill as she added, "I'm not sure that I know you. Your name, sir?"
Right.
And he quests and finds the fears and the nervousness, and he says, "I'm New Boy." And then the barrier is gone.
Right. But that's why I'm wondering.
It might be something with that. It might be that she actually didn't recognize him as he didn't recognize her vaguely afterwards. And she's kind of wondering, who is this guy that's calling me Nosebleed that I don't go by for the last, couple years? Oh, it's New Boy? Okay. Now I recognize you. I don't know. It could be a couple other things.
Yeah, I don't know. I just was wondering because it seems odd that she'd be a little scared. Although I guess he's dressed super nice, so maybe just I don't know.
The context is kind of thrown out.
Yeah.
And it could be like later in the chapter, it says that pretty much all of the older kids in the neighborhood called her Nosebleed. But we don't know if that was just we don't know if that was mostly localized to the friends that she ran with, or if it was literally like most of the kids in the neighborhood and she just hasn't gone by it for a while. I don't know.
I don't know either.
But did you notice that she's going by Molly Chandler because that's her profession? She doesn't really have a last name.
Yeah, that's true. I did notice that.
Yeah, so they get reacquainted.
And Fitz compliments her dress or skirts.
Yep, she's wearing a red skirt. That was her mother's. He kind of lies that he needs 2 candles so he can stay with her. And they're talking about different things. She's flexing her expertise on scents and candles.
And also talking about how she made the best scented candles in Buckkeep. Even the 2 other Chandlers in town admitted it.
Yeah. I mean, she's been doing this since she was
very young.
A really little kid.
Yeah.
And she's like 13 or 14 right now.
Yeah. So
running errands by herself.
But still crazy like she's that good that the other professionals are like, yeah, that 14-year-old really knows how to make those scents.
Yeah. How jealous do you think those other 2 candle makers are? They're like, wow.
Like it's only gonna get worse.
I know. But there's a little line in here that Mavis Threadsnip had told her that Molly's mother had mixed a candle with other herbs to make a wonderful candle that would calm even a colicky baby. And that's a little throwaway line that we kind of come back to at the end of the chapter, or end of this section, I should say.
Yeah.
But Fitz is hearing all of this expertise that Molly is spouting and is like, oh, I want to impress her too with everything I've learned.
I know things.
I know things too.
What a like crush thing to do. Like, well, I know about that thing. You want to know more? Oh, Fitz.
And he just encyclopedia minds this. Oh, this thresher's root. It can be used to make a man sleep or kill a baby.
And Molly is horrified.
Yeah.
Like, why do you know that?
I mean, okay, to be fair, he does go through like it can be used to make tinctures to soothe muscles and ointments and stuff like that. But then he ends with like,
also a child would die if you give it to them.
Which is completely understandable. I mean, they come from different worlds of learning where Fitz is just, like I said before, an encyclopedia knowledge. He's book smart about these things, while Molly has lived in the town all of her life, has been relatively poor all of her life. She's probably been around families that have had kids. She knows babies. She knows like her neighbors.
Right.
And to hear like, oh, this root can kill somebody, you're just like, what?
Yeah, but also the fact that Fitz thought that would be impressive.
Right, yeah.
Like, oh yeah, and by the way.
But that prompts Fitz to flex his lying skill, showing off another skill he's learned.
Well, I don't think he's trying to show off. I think he's just trying not to make her hate him.
Of course he is. I'm just saying that. Yeah. Flexing another thing that he's learned in the meantime of them being friends. And it starts a lie of a mission that kind of threads throughout their whole relationship.
Yeah.
And it is a huge point of contention later because he kind of leads her to believe that he is just the scribe's errand boy.
Right.
That he wouldn't really know anything. He's like, oh, it's just something I heard. And then kind of goes on to say, oh, yeah, I know some things about this from a page that I saw from the scribe and things like that. And later it gets brought up that she finds out that he is the Fitz, that he is of the royal line. And she feels completely betrayed about who he is.
Right. Which I think Fitz is doing because he doesn't want to lose a friend and doesn't want her to turn into somebody who maybe uses that or doesn't want to be friends with him anymore.
Or even just views him as the bastard.
Yeah.
He finally recognized why he likes going down to town and he doesn't want to lose that feeling.
Right. And this kind of strikes at one of Fitz's core personality traits of, I'm just not going to tell this person something and deal with it if they figure it out.
Don't change the status quo.
Yeah. Which is a little sad. But also you can tell here that she obviously is not thrilled to hear about a death mixture.
No.
And so I wonder if this is kind of what sticks with him for their whole relationship. And that's why he never really delves into the fact that he was trained as an assassin.
I was kind of curious about that too, actually. Just in general. It's just, yeah.
Which is kind of dumb, which is right up Fitz's alley as well.
12-year-old boy.
Yeah, this 13-year-old girl isn't thrilled by the fact I know how to kill somebody. Yeah. I'll just never tell her I'm an assassin ever. Feels like something Fitz would do.
Yeah, true. Fitz might actually be almost 13 because didn't we kind of ballpark his birthday around winter?
She's 14-ish.
Yeah.
But still, Fitz.
But he admits that he can read. And it just, again, shows the gap between the two of them. And I think it slightly kind of begins to dawn in Fitz's mind how privileged he is in the castle.
Well, because he doesn't know.
Yeah, he doesn't. Yeah, but at the same time, he's a 12-year-old boy, so he just kind of brushes it aside as well.
Yeah.
But he learns that she cannot read, which is probably very typical in Buckkeep Town.
Right.
In Bucktown. And he offers to read some things for Molly. Right. So they go back to the chandlery.
So I wonder if this is typical in this town, because it does seem like there's a big emphasis on education. Like, people are welcome to the keep to learn by the fires at winter. So it made me wonder if maybe it's just because she has to take care of her family's business. Like, her mom knew how to read, and presumably her mom is in the same financial situation that probably a little bit better off because, there was an adult taking care of the finances. But I just wondered if maybe this is something just not even just that the lower class has to deal with, or if it's just because this is a young girl who has to take all the responsibility of the adults around her and doesn't have an opportunity to just be a child that gets to learn.
Right. But it does say in here that her mother was a dress help to a lady at the keep.
Right.
And then she was taught letters.
That's true.
And the name drops in the first scene with Fedrin. One was Justice. So I'm guessing it's mainly just nobles' kids.
Right.
That are welcome in the keep. Or, more rich people who would live around the keep rather than the town itself.
Huh. Good point. Good point.
So, I don't know. I there is an emphasis, but I think it's still pretty classist in general.
Yeah, definitely.
But he and Molly both go to the Chivalry, and she's like, my father's in there. Don't be too familiar with me. So Molly and Fitz walk into the Chivalry, and her father is asleep in the shop.
And he's looking rough.
Yeah, he's looking skeletal, not just skinny. And Fitz kind of looks him over and says, Shade taught me well, this guy isn't going to live for a long time. He's not going to live
much longer
in general. Yeah. And he has declined a ton in the 5 years.
Yeah.
Since
beating Molly that first time we met him. Which he may or may not do anymore. Probably because he's so weak.
Yep.
But also maybe because he was skilled to stop. Who knows?
You guys didn't see that, but Emma has an incredibly smug look on her face when she said that.
Yeah, so they go in and Molly brings out her mom's writing.
Yep, 5 tablets. And 4 of them are recipes, herbal recipes. And that's kind of what I want to go back to, because I'm guessing one of them might be the candle that was mentioned earlier that Molly wanted to recreate from her mom's golden days of making candles. But the last one is the most important one.
Right. On this day was born my Molly Nosegay, sweet as a bunch of posies. For her birth labors, I burned 2 tapers of bayberry and 2 cup candles, scented with 2 handfuls of the small violets that grow near Dowell's mill, and 1 handful of red root, chopped very fine. May she do likewise when her time comes to bear a child, and her labor will be as easy as mine, and the fruit of it as perfect. So I believe.
It's such a beautiful gift that Fitz could give Molly.
Right. It's her mom just proud of having her daughter.
Yeah.
And her name.
Gave her name. She's Molly Nosegay, not Molly Nosebleed or Molly Chandler. It's why the kids started calling her Nosebleed.
Yeah.
And it gives a history of what to do when she was pregnant. And I think she burns some of those things the same, like when she has B in the last book or in the last trilogy. Yeah, I'm not sure.
I don't remember
either, but it'd be interesting to come back and see if it's the same that's mentioned.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's mentioned for any of her other kids with Beric.
Yeah, I don't know. But yeah, so that might be some of the candles that her mom used to make for other women too, which would be what she was searching to make, and is really cool that she now has the recipe, as well as several others, which would be super important because her mom was obviously very talented with candle making, and now she can recreate those and probably get more customers because of that.
Yeah. So Molly kind of gives him a gift of 4 candles and ushers him out. Like, you
Doesn't let him pay.
You don't need to pay for these. Thank you so much. Get out. I need to,
Yeah, be alone with my thoughts.
Yep.
And she says, I have it now, a name from my mother. And so does Fitz. They got their names from their moms on the same day.
Yeah.
Except Fitz doesn't know it at this moment, but that's like...
I hadn't thought of that. That's really cool.
Yeah, whenever I read that, I was like, oh my gosh, literally the same day they both find out their names. Really cute. And then he's all embarrassing and says, it suits you.
heat rose in his cheeks and he hurried away from the door.
I love it so much. It just, young love.
He has to go and hurry up and finish his shopping list. And then, since it's evening, he starts making his way up towards the keep again.
Mm-hmm. And things take a turn to the worst.
Oh, yeah. He hears a couple horses hurrying up behind him. And also, the town was crowded into such small area as to make riding a horse a vanity rather than a convenience. So these must be horses from the keep stable. And he was kind of wondering who would be riding.
He's dumb enough to ride up
to ride
the path.
horses on these slick cobble and uneven cobblestones to risk Burrick's wrath. And he sees Regal and Verity.
And they freak out.
Yeah.
They, like, slam on the brakes.
At sight of me standing quietly beside the road, they both pulled in their horses so violently that Regal spun aside and nearly went down on his knees. And
the first thing that Fitz says is like, Burrick is going to kill you. The horse.
Regal gave an inarticulate cry, and a half instant later, Verity shakingly laughed at him. You thought he was a ghost, same as I. Whoa, lad, you gave us a turn standing so quiet as that, and looking so much like him. Eh, Regal? Verity, you're a fool. Hold your tongue.
Oh, yeah. That would be a little weird to see somebody. As a person who looks identical to their parent, I'm sure it would be super weird if my mom were to die and after hearing that, my family members saw me standing quietly
at dusk on the side of a road as they're
staring
just
at
received.
Them.
Yeah,
I can see how that would scare some people.
Yeah, so they're bringing a letter from a ship that Patience sent out, and Chivalry has passed away.
Yeah.
Regal is full of disdain, and he's even worse than normal.
And is he, in this instant, trying to insinuate that Fitz maybe killed Chivalry?
I don't think so. I think he's just insinuating that he's a scoundrel and like sneaking about and going to town to sneak away to do terrible and not royal things. And
right. I just thought it was weird that he's like, oh, interesting timing or whatever it was that he said.
Yeah, what are you doing out on the road so late?
Such a likely tale. Yeah. A bit too much of a coincidence. Like, I don't know. I just was wondering if he's really trying to push that narrative.
I don't think so. I think I don't think there's any logistically sound ways for him to do that. And I think Regal is just kind of...
Yeah.
I don't know. It goes to show that he's being talked about between Regal and his mother even more so. Because it says later that, from what I hear, he has ideas enough, and we can thank our dear father for that. So he's obviously getting more and more talked about as he's growing up, and as the test happened a couple years ago, and it's just even more poisoning against him.
Right. Do you think Regal knew before this that Chivalry was dead, or do you think this is news to him?
That's something that we might never actually learn. Because I don't know what Queen Desire actually thinks of Regal. If she thinks that he's, so smart and the perfect king and everything, or if she's like, I need to get him on the throne, but he can't handle these delicate details yet.
Fair. And it's also his brother, so maybe, they don't seem to have too much love, but it's still a sibling.
I'm guessing no. Because he also might have told Shrewd, or Shrewd might have been able to get it out of him.
Fair. See, I wouldn't be surprised if he learned later on. I was just wondering how soon he learns, or if he does, I guess. But
I'm guessing this is also a surprise to him because, Regal gave an inarticulate shriek at the sight of Fitz.
But see, I was wondering if that was like, he thinks he sees a ghost and he's like, he's gonna kill me now. Like,
it could be actually, no.
Like he feels guilty and that's why he got so freaked out.
There's weight to both arguments.
Right.
Yeah.
But
Verity kind of just says it plain. He's just like,
What?
Don't mind him, boy. You gave us both a bit of a turn. A river ship just came into town flying the pennant for a special message. And when Regal and I rode down to get it, lo and behold, it's from Patience to tell us Chivalry's dead. And Regal's like, shut up, Verity. You're telling everybody right now that could walk by.
Yeah, and the king doesn't even know yet, which is a valid point.
That is
you
a very
should
valid
probably
point.
tell your dad before the whole city knows.
And it kind of comes about later. In that moment, you're like, Verity, why did you just like plainly say it? Whatever. Later, it kind of comes down that it shows that Verity had a mask on.
Mm-hmm.
And
he's just really sad. It would be hard. He just lost his brother.
He's still a brother to him. It's his older brother.
Mm-hmm.
And now Verity has to maintain that kingly face, the facade.
Yeah. But also he's probably a little bit in shock.
Oh,
because when you hear a family member dies, it's not like, I feel like you understand that it's real, but it takes a while to admit to yourself that it's like you really are just never going to meet that person again.
Right.
And so I guess I could see how the shock of seeing his brother's likeness on the side of the road moments after news of his death would just make you kind of blurt it out without thinking. But
Regal goes on ahead and Fitz just looks up at him and he's like, my father's dead. And it says, he still sat on his horse, bigger and bulkier than Regal. He still always sat a horse better. I think it was the soldier in him. He looked at me in silence for a moment. Then he said, yes, my brother's dead. He granted me that, my uncle, that instant of kinship, and I think that ever after it changed how I saw the man.
And then he offers to bring Fitz up to the castle. And the first thing Fitz thinks of is how mad Burek would be to treat a horse that way.
Yep.
Which I feel like in this instance,
it might be forgiven.
Yeah, because Burek is going to take this hard.
Yeah, we find that out soon.
Uh-huh.
But Verity does apologize. He says, I'm sorry you found out this way. I wasn't thinking. It does not seem it can be real, which is touching on exactly what you said before. Mm-hmm. It really hasn't sunk in to him yet. I caught a glimpse of his true grief, and then he leaned forward and spoke to his horse, and it sprang forward. In moments, I was alone on the road again.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard to imagine what's truly going through Fitz's mind, even though we are a part of it right now. Because he never really met his father, but he also had such grand thoughts when the briefest hint of the possibility of Chivalry becoming king again went through his mind. He's like, oh my gosh, this is going to be awesome. I'm going to ride on Sudi along the roads. Like, this is going to be great.
Yeah. And this chapter especially has been very heavy-handed at Fitz really, at even the slightest hint of his father being mentioned, gets excited that maybe this means somehow I'll get to meet him this time. And now he's never gets that chance again.
Yeah. And he says that he thought for a moment about running away, about setting the basket down and just hiding and never coming back. And he's wondering if anybody would even look for him.
Yeah.
But instead, he just trudges up the hill.
Yeah.
Continues on.
Oh, so sad. I feel so bad for Fitz. Because not only did he just lose his dad, which is not really his father figure because he's never known this man, but he lost the ability to ever get to know him.
Yeah.
And learn anything about him from his own dad's mouth. I
think every time we get a mention of Chivalry after this, about stories about him, he's like enraptured by it. He comments on I've never was able to do this, so I'm glad to hear this.
Yeah. And
things like that. And he always talks about just knowing his likeness from the portrait that's hanging in the keep. And
right.
Man.
Ugh.
Fitz is going through one here.
I know. And after the whole Molly scene, I truly was like, oh, we're going to end on a happy note, because I totally forgot what was coming. So I was like, finally, we can say Fitz was happy. And then no.
Nope.
Wah, wah.
We're going to say it again. Another roller coaster of a chapter.
Yeah.
Here.
Poor Fitz. He can never truly be happy at the end of a chapter.
It's just not allowed, I guess. Thank you, Robin Hobb, for that.
Oh, poor guy.
He finally gets some freedom to go down to the town. He was offered hope that he could travel around, shot down. He was offered hope that his father might become king and he might meet him again, shot down. Got from freedom down into the town and met his mother without knowing it. Met Molly and rekindled that, which is fantastic.
Right.
But then, an hour later, finds out his father died.
And he'll never get to know him.
I don't even know what to say, honestly.
No.
This is one of those really rough moments, and it's not even like physical harm that Fitz came to or anything like that. And it's not even one of the biggest emotional blows to him. But from reading this series how much it means to him.
Yeah.
And how much it hurts him to not ever have met his father.
Because as angry as he is that his father wasn't a part of his life, I think he's more angry that he never got to know him because of the death.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining us in this this crazy episode.
Heartbreaking end to this episode. Before we go, you can support us by finding us on any social media at isfitzhappy, or emailing us at isfitzhappy@gmail.com to let us know your favorite theories, your favorite memes, or just what we did wrong so we can correct it next time.
Yeah. Thanks for listening along with us, and hope to see you next time.